Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. We have a returning guest, Stuart Cross, who's the owner of Morgan Cross Consulting, who's helped companies with growth, among other things. And we're going to have a timely conversation today, Stuart, about business strategy post-COVID. But first of all, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Great to be here. It's a big topic, big issue.
It's a massive topic, and I'm sure we won't get to cover it all today, but we'll do our best to get into a bit of detail on some important things that hopefully our listeners value. So it's been a while since you came on. I think you were on last time before lockdown, so it's a while in itself. That feels like a million years ago.
Yeah,
Only a
wow.
couple. So what have you been up to in your world? How are things working in Morgan Cross? Anything you want to tell us about, or you can talk about?
No, I think for me is interestingly enough, particularly over the last kind of couple of years, I think strategy has become more important to my clients. Kind of having that kind of focus, knowing where they're trying to get to, I think has become even more important because success is increasingly harder earned. So that's been the kind of key thing for me. It's been more pure strategy work that I've been working on with my clients, which is what I love. So that's great.
Excellent. So doing something you love. We have quite a few people on that do that, and it makes a massive difference to your life, doesn't it? And your working week, if it's something you're actually invested in and you see the value of what you're delivering.
I think I run my own business, and so if I don't love what I do, I need to have a word with the boss.
Yeah, you got a choice as well.
Yeah,
a choice.
Yeah.
Anyway, business strategy. Then, so you just mentioned there, it's kind of taking up pretty much all of your time with all your clients. I know you've done a couple of sessions with us, which have been really helpful. Have you seen any swing if you kind of split your work into? We use COVID as the barometer, pre and post COVID, but clearly post COVID we've had a global recession, we've had war, we've had pay inflation, Brexit's kind of merged grade in with all of that. I'm not sure if you can almost take that out because personally I don't know which bits are Brexit related or not in anything that's happened, if I'm honest, because of just the timing of it. But have people started to think differently about their strategy? If we use kind of the pre and post COVID as the barometer, are they thinking about things more long term, more short term? Are there any trends at a top line that you've seen?
Yeah, I think there are definitely some changes to how companies go about thinking about strategy, but also implementing strategy. Kind of there was an article I read in the HBR Harvard Business Review once, which must be over 15 years ago. It was with Jeff Bezos, and he was talking about Amazon, and he said, "We're fixed on the vision, but we're flexible on the journey." And I think that in the post-pandemic world, especially what's happened since, that idea of being fixed on the vision, flexible on the journey, has kind of been magnified for most organizations and for most business leaders. So the idea that you've got a plan that you're going to stick to is kind of gone. But being able to react to events as they happen, but keeping on your mission, has become far more important. That's why I see. I've kind of thinking about the kind of conversation we're going to have. I don't know if it's helpful. I think there are kind of three areas, Simon, that come into play that my kind of clients are thinking about. Would it be helpful if I just kind of go through them and then you can ask me kind of where you think might be interesting?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. The three things. One is the importance of winning today, but also winning tomorrow. And I was speaking to a client this morning who said is, for the last 3 years, all I've been thinking about is supply chain. I haven't thought about sales and marketing. It's just been so focused on getting through to the end of the day, end of the week, and getting products kind of to the customers. That's all he's been able to do. But I just don't think that's good enough for organizations now. You have to not only win today, but you need to win tomorrow. And I think some companies may have slightly lost sight of tomorrow. I had another client who said that he liked to think about his balance of time, 80% on delivering this year's numbers 15% thinking about how he's going to deliver next year's numbers, and 5% beyond that. I don't know whether that's the right balance. Personally, I'd probably be more like 70, 20, 10. But having that balance of how we're going to win today, win tomorrow, I think it becomes really important because you can't take anything for granted. So
Yeah,
that's go
go on.
on.
I'll ask you a few questions then on that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that because it kind of keeps you in the moment, but also has that eye on what's next. I agree in terms of that split feels a little bit tight. And I mean, back to our corporate world, without mentioning any names, there was always lots of focus on the future, that 3-5 year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the underlying frustration across many departments in that business and others, I'm sure those listening will feel it, is that plan almost never happens. So somebody
Yeah.
leaves, it gets reinvented. Somebody leaves, it gets reinvented. We get 2 years in, and it's now the 3 year plan based on the 2 years. So yeah, I like that kind of. I suppose if it was tech development, it'd be agile approach. I
Yeah.
know I'm going to build a till system. Let's say I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get there and what it looks like, but I know I'm going to build a till system.
Yeah. I think I think that plays to my second point, Simon, kind of what you're just saying, and that is that adaptability beats forecasting. So as you say, the kind of plan never happens, and being able to adapt to events, I think, has become critical. It goes back to that Jeff Bezos, fixed on the vision, flexible on the journey. So, did my clients really fundamentally change their strategy as a result of the pandemic? No. But did they change their tactics? Did they change their initiatives? Absolutely. So, kind of one client that I had was struggling in the UK, but their Middle East business was starting to pick up, and they've absolutely doubled down on the Middle East and put the kind of UK not on ice, but it's kind of secondary in terms of investment. They shifted their resource, their focus to where they could win. So that wasn't in the plan, but it's what they did for kind of 12, 18 months. Another client kind of in the homewares area, they were winning with their trade customers, and so they put so much more effort into trade because they weren't thinking about they had lots of plans for their kind of domestic customers, but they were winning where the trade was, and so they pushed harder on that. So all of this, it's messier, but it generates results faster, and it is that idea of agile, those principles coming into how companies can actually implement strategy.
And again, a wise man once told me there's two types of forecast: lucky and wrong, which kind of stuck with me. If forecasting was that good, we'd all be forecasting lottery numbers, wouldn't we? But again, it some of that, I suppose, the essence of some of that you described there is there's some entrepreneurship, so seizing the opportunity. I
Yeah.
suppose also prioritization, so understanding where that opportunity is, where you can maybe monetize that or grow market share or brand awareness, and seizing that, but without forgetting where I suppose the core is. So for that business, yes, you turn the temperature down slightly on maybe your home country, the UK, but you've not forgotten about it, because there's a danger, I suppose, you go all in the Far East,
Yeah.
then you absolutely give your competitors the opportunity to come in and take what's your bread and butter because you've just put all your chips in one basket. So I suppose there's a balance within that, isn't there?
Of course there is. Yes, absolutely. But I think the interesting thing is that certainly for slightly kind of larger businesses, kind of mid-size and upwards, that there has to be some level of organizational change to get those changes in behaviors, and to be able to, there has to be kind of, as well, you talked about entrepreneurialism in the organization, but there also has to be greater empowerment. So you're asking kind of people, you can't plan everything centrally and you can't do everything top down. You have to find a new way of working that allows that entrepreneurialism to take place, that ownership and drive to take place at the front line, but to find a way, as you say, of balancing the different needs of the organization. And I think that's kind of really interesting. I don't have a super answer for it, but I think a lot of my clients have started to work out how they can make that, get that ways of working kind of to work for them.
And that must be an added challenge in there of the whole work from home debate that kind of rumbles on, doesn't it? I probably like you, I get the emails every day from all the various retail journals and stuff, and somebody's forcing people back into the office, somebody else is downsizing space because they're not. I speak to people on the floor and they've been told they need to go back into the office for 3 days a week, but nobody's policing it, so they don't bother. So there seems to be a desire to get people together, and I still, and I sound old by saying this, I still think, certainly in our business and other businesses we work with, when we're face to face, it is far more productive from a relationship point of view, from an output point of view, from just those little glances around the room or those chats outside of the meeting, than doing it on Teams or Zoom or whatever it is. But I think this is a debate that's going to rumble on in lots of businesses to fine tune what works for them, but also what works from a business output point of view.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'd scribble a little note to myself to raise, which was managing organizational fatigue is the other side of this, because I think leaders are knackered, workers are knackered. They have this whole work from home versus work in the office. You've got the idea of, how many organizations are there? There's people working in shops, working in the factory who have to come in, and then you've got these office workers who don't have to come in. So that kind of feels unfair. I feel really sorry personally for young people just starting out on their career, how they learn about their role. They can't do it at the end of just on a Teams call every now and then with someone. You have to learn by kind of being part of the team, and kind of, you almost watch it. My wife is a lawyer, and she spent the first 2 years sitting in an office with one of the partners learning what the job was all about. So I think there's all of that as well, which for companies to be able to sustain the capabilities and kind of build the new capabilities, build that sense of teamwork and engagement and ownership to drive all this and to deliver the strategy, kind of finding a way to, through all this organizational difficulties kind of and challenges, I think is absolutely crucial. I think you're absolutely right. It's critical.
So those are the first 2 points. Then what's your third?
The third is I wrote a book over 10 years ago, and one of the chapters was called "Nothing Fails Like Success," and that's the idea that companies can, when they start off, they're on a mission. For those that succeed, they're able to kind of implement that mission, grow and thrive, and then they sort of reach a plateau where they're kind of succeeding. And that's the kind of, I call it the cultural danger zone, where do they just stick with what they're doing, or do they change? And if they're not willing to change and think about their next success curve, the chances are they're going to go into decline. So if you think about, most companies don't fail because they're bad at what they do. They fail because they're good at what they do, but they hold on to that too long as the markets change and technology changes and customers change. So, even take Kodak, for example. It was an early pioneer of digital photography, but it got stuck with its commitment to kind of the old technology, which meant it kind of had to file for bankruptcy at one point. And to me, what COVID and the pandemic and the war and everything that's happening with the economy is that nothing fails like success is being accelerated. So the world's coming at organizations and business leaders faster and faster. And so you can't take for granted what's winning now. You have to think about kind of how you're going to win tomorrow and be willing to change and disrupt your own business as much as changing and disrupting kind of other businesses. So we see the Trevise of John Lewis partnership, and how, even before the pandemic, department stores were on a downward curve, but John Lewis seemed relatively strong. Since then, kind of John Lewis has really struggled. How does it compete in the digital world? And it's having to completely change its business model. The danger for John Lewis is it's not doing enough and it's doing it too late. And I think that is the other lesson for organizations, is this fact that nothing fails like success is going to be accelerated or has accelerated. And so we need to think kind of more quickly. And it goes back to that whole win today, win tomorrow. We need to keep thinking about tomorrow and how we're going to win then, not just today.
Yeah, it's made me think of a couple of things. I think your Kodak story reminded me kind of the Blockbuster one.
Yeah.
And I might be making this up, but I think it's true, so I'll go with it. The guys who founded Netflix, I'm sure, had a conversation with Blockbuster in the early days. And the Blockbuster guys, we've got the market. We might do postal, etc. It's never going to be anything that's more. There's always a physical product, and look where Netflix are now, and look where Blockbuster is or isn't now. So it goes to show that kind of, like you say, what's happening today doesn't necessarily mean it's relevant tomorrow.
It's that's why I call it the cultural danger zone, Simon. There's a danger that you get that level of arrogance in the organisation, that you think you're not needed, and so kind of Blockbuster can dismiss the guys from Netflix. I remember must have been about 2005, 2006. I was in the UK head office of Nokia, and I was talking to some of the guys there, and it was just after the iPhone had been launched.
Yeah.
And their view was that it was only one product, and so it wouldn't impact on their business too much, because they had a 50% share of the smartphone market as it was at that point. Within 5 years, their 50% market share had collapsed to, 2 or 3% market share.
Yeah, I'm sure the Nokia iAd's probably still got 25% charge about 15 years later. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And that whole John Lewis debate, without, I suppose, going too deep into it, part of me wonders how much of their ownership structure helps or hinders with that.
Yeah,
I know there's been some stuff in the press about potentially moving away from that partnership model, which I think will be very, very difficult. And having worked with them and some of the team at Waitrose, there's some massive strengths in it. They just need to find the right balance to keep it relevant. And I think a great place to look is Next. They bought Paperchase, I think, didn't they? They've got a sock company. They do some of the Gap stuff now.
They bought everyone.
Yeah, and they do a really good job online. They do a really good job of merging that into the space they've got in store. Like him or loathe him, Mike Ashley's kept a lot of people in jobs by buying up these retailers, and again, he's starting to morph some of that into Sports Direct and flannels. So there's a new generation of it. I wouldn't necessarily call it a department store anymore. It's a different experience. So it can win. I think they've got to find a way to make it win within their ownership structure.
It's not really about competitive strategy. It's almost like a war of business models.
Yeah.
And it's a question of, has the John Lewis business model had its day? Can you win with that business model?
I'm sure there'll be some strong advocates for and against. Difficult one. The one thing that's for sure is time's going to tell, isn't it? And whether that's in the short term or the long term, we'll see. They've been around for long enough, hopefully, to survive.
I really hope they do. I mean, the kind of brand and the experience can be great at John Lewis, but it's about staying relevant, isn't it? And as you say, does their structure help them or hinder them in staying relevant?
Yeah, they're certainly getting a lot of press about it at the moment. And the other thing within that cultural danger zone was recruitment. So it's a bit of an employees market at the moment. I think there's more jobs than people, and certainly those things like housekeeping in hotels, whether it's a symptom of Brexit, and that was masked by COVID, people are really struggling to get those jobs filled. Therefore, you probably go to a hotel, whether it be a budget one or a high-end one, you probably don't get your room cleaned every day unless you ask. In some of the more budget ones, you may even have to pay for that now. So that to me is a good example of where the business model's changed in line with the service that can be provided. So we haven't got enough people to provide this, so our options are do less of it, charge for it, and people will opt out by default. So it kind of reduces your workload, and then think of ways to automate. So, there's loads of stuff that can help reduce that process. But I wonder in some of these cultural danger zones whether it is that the new people that have come into that business at certain levels are seen as naysayers or maybe even negative at times, because institutionally in those businesses, we've always done it this way, we'll always carry on this way. The figures tell the story that that's the right way to do it.
Yeah. But the kind of it's that the kind of world is changing. So being able to kind of the challenge for leaders now is to be able to find a way to, especially for these older established companies, is to take the kind of DNA of that organization and make it relevant for the new world. And so they have to find a way to engage the organization, because they're going to have to leave some things behind and they're going to have to create some new things. Every business has to do that. And so the challenge for leaders is huge. And that's why I talked about organizational fatigue. That, if I think about a lot of my CEO clients, the COVID, the pandemic, the year one was really frightening, but it was also invigorating for them. They were working so hard, but so intensely. Their level of teamwork with their teams was, they were talking every day. It was on Teams, but they were talking every day about really important things. So they found that invigorating. But over time, 2-3 years down the line, they're absolutely knackered. And so but the challenge continues for them. And so how do leaders is another, it's not really a strategy question, but how do leaders kind of keep themselves kind of fit and able to lead their organizations through all this kind of maelstrom of activity and demands?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I wrote a couple of things down there while you were talking, and it's probably a summary of, I'd say 99% of organizations we're working with, forget the sector, are at level of change. So the change that those businesses are going on, whether that be people, organizational design, process, branding, marketing, product, making it stick. Because I think the big thing we're seeing is there's that much change coming down that operationally, lots of it doesn't stick. And the foundations of the second change are laid on the foundations of the first change. Therefore, change one doesn't stick, and we've already pretty much given you change two. Both of them then become a bit flaky. And in those early days of lockdown, one of the things that was really good to see was the level of bureaucracy and I suppose rigor is really the wrong word, but of slowing down of things. So organisations that had a 6-month plan, a 2-year plan to do something, did it in 3 days all of a sudden because the platform was burning. And again, I'm seeing some of that creep back in now of the cautiousness of whether it be IT or procuring equipment, whatever it might be, that just wasn't there because there was to keep surviving, to keep going, we've got to get this done in this time frame. Otherwise, we can't take an online payment. We can't close the shop, but open a hatch to deliver parcels, whatever it might have been. And I think there's a couple of dynamics in my mind, along with all the other things that we've talked about, that are really playing into that fatigue. Therefore, the priority of the strategy or the execution of the strategy isn't on a solid foundation.
No, but I think so. Kind of a couple of things there. One is it. We talked earlier that the kind of that agility is critical to success, and so organisations have to continue to think in a kind of agile kind of way rather than the older type of planning kind of way, and that's a job for the leader. But equally, a strategy only works if it's resourced effectively. So you can't do everything. So there has to be some way of kind of making sure the resources are put in the right area, so that you can actually deliver. And I think where the clients kind of talked about the one that my client who kind of succeeded in the Middle East, they actually took out marketing spend. They took out capital spend from their UK budget and put it into Middle East. You can't just kind of keep everything the same if you're working in that agile way, you also have to have a way of moving resources from one area to the next to be able to make it work as well.
So 3 key areas then that you've talked about. So importance of winning today and winning tomorrow, adaptability beats forecasting, and nothing fails like success, which leads you into that cultural danger zone. And I think we've pulled out some bits. I'm sure there's much more we could go at if we had the time, but we'll pause there for this one. Stuart, if people want to continue this conversation, have a different type of conversation with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Well, you can find me at morgancross.co.uk. I'm there, and I'm on Twitter at Stuart Cross. And I always answer polite notifications and messages.
Excellent. Always great to catch up. Really appreciate your time for coming on, and we'll speak soon.
Great to be here. Thanks, Simon.